Hi, I'm Dr. Lourdes Del Rosso. I represent the World Sleep Society, and this year I have the honor to co-chair World Sleep Day 2021 with the slogan Regular Sleep, Healthy Future. As part of the slogan of Regular Sleep, Healthy Future, today I'm going to be talking to you about how sleep, and particularly regular sleep, promotes healing. So, sleep promotes healing in many areas, but for today's talk, I'm going to emphasize in three areas: infection, chronic disease, stress, and how all of these areas are going to contribute to our well being. So, we're going to be talking about these areas in how sleep interacts with these areas to promote healing and promote a healthy future. We're going to start with infection. So, infection can be caused by either an organism called a bacteria, a virus, a parasite that enters our body. Our body naturally has defenses against organisms. Our biggest defense is just our skin barrier. Our skin is a barrier that protects us from organisms entering our body. And that's why in any pandemic that things are transmitted by air droplets, and now we're wearing masks, so we're protecting our eyes because those are areas that infection can enter our body. Once something enters our body, it's not always the end, and we just get infection, because we also have other mechanisms by which our body protects us from infection. Some of those mechanisms include cells that are called, like, the types of cells that come out to the area and fight this bacteria or virus. And those cells are called macrophages. And these cells can also produce substances that are called antibodies. And you all may hear about this or may already know about these things when we produce antibodies against infection. And there are other substances that are called cytokines, for example. So with infection, there is a bidirectional relationship with sleep. How so? And why do I say that it is in two direction? Because when we get an infection, our sleep patterns are affected. But also, when our sleep patterns are affected, we are more prone to get an infection. So that's what it means to have a two-way pattern. For example, when we have a virus, a cold virus, and we have fever and we have cough, what is another symptom that we get? We get sleepy and tired. Or sometimes people say, well, just go to sleep, and sleep will improve your symptoms of the infection. So those are the two ways sleep can participate in an infection. And the reason that we get more sleepy is because those cells that are fighting the infection also produce substances that are going to fight the infection, but are going to make us sleepy. Like those cytokines that we mentioned and those antibodies that we mentioned are going to tell our brain to rest and are going to make us sleepy. So that's one of the reasons why we get sleepy when we get an infection. We have an internal clock that is called our circadian clock. And our circadian clock, we always talk in the sense of sleep. Like, well, by around 9 or 10 o'clock at night, we get sleepy. It's time to go to bed. And we wake up at 7 in the morning. But other rhythms in our body also are under the influence of our internal clock or circadian clock. And the production of these antibodies and the cytokines and the cells that fight infection are also influenced by our clock. And guess what? They are produced more at night while we sleep. So it's another yet important fact about sleep. Some are dependent of sleep, but some are independent and still are produced at night. So this is very important for us to know that there are other factors that could be sleep dependent. Like when we go to sleep, sleep has those abilities to promote that healing by producing these specific antibodies or specific substances in certain sleep stages. So sleep, in other words, is going to be our friend when we want to fight infection. The relationship, there's a lot of research going on in terms of how sleep helps us and produces all of these cells. And I have included a couple of images to be shared with you that could look a little bit complicated, but in short, the message is that when we get a good night's sleep, we are going to have all the immune battles and soldiers that are inside our body to help us fight this infection. Equally, when we do not have enough sleep, like when we have sleep deprivation, when we sleep 4 hours, or when we have shift works and when we go to home after working long hours at night and we don't sleep, our body's defenses drop, and it makes us more vulnerable to be catching an infection. So whenever an infectious process goes into our body, either a bacteria or virus, our body doesn't have those defenses that are required. It's not just during sleep as a whole, but one of the messages that I want to transmit today is that it's also with sleep disruption. So it is very important to identify if we have a sleep disorder, or if our sleep is restless, if we're waking up through the night, and we're not getting solid sleep through the night, because sleep disruption as well can interfere with the production of the substances that are helping us fight this infection. There are also images that show how there's some research specific, like if you want to know, there's research that has been done specific on how sleep changes both after viral infection, bacterial infection, parasite infection. So there are specific changes, and also how sleep can protect against this. Another very, very important aspect about infection that we should not forget is now that we are in the time in COVID, that a lot of countries worldwide are getting the vaccine distribution, and we're distributing vaccines. It's very important to know that how sleep can also affect the response of our body after we get the vaccine. And there are having studies that show that the antibody production that our body gets, the reaction after the vaccine, the immunity that we get after the vaccine, can be altered, can be diminished if we do not sleep enough the days before. Like if we sleep 4 hours, 5 hours, our body may not react as well to the vaccine and produce the antibodies that we are supposed to produce after the vaccine. So this is very important to consider. Now, COVID, of course, has affected sleep, not just in terms of the infection that has caused and how the infection can affect in terms of the symptoms that causes people, but also by the stressors, the mental health, the biological effects, and the consequences of this isolation, the lockdown, and working from home, and a lot of the other consequences that we have and that we're facing because of the COVID pandemic. So with this introduction, in terms of that infections do not always cause an infection directly to the body, but also a consequence around us, that we can be, our life can be affected, our stress level can be affected. I am going to be a little bit of the introduction to how stress affects our sleep. Well, stress is something that our body responds to by secreting cortisol and hormones of stress. And this cortisol and hormone of stress can affect us in different ways. It can affect our blood pressure. It can affect different situations. So when we do not sleep well, let's start with like daytime. During daytime, our cortisol level can go high because we are up and we are active. But when we go to bed and we sleep, our cortisol levels should come down because we are resting. And this is a period of healing from the stress of the day. It's not just a period of healing, but it's also a period of cleaning toxic materials that have been accumulated during the day. And when we sleep, all our stress level, cortisol and stress hormones, should drop to a lower level. But when we have disrupted sleep, when our sleep is broken, or when we have a sleep disorder like obstructive sleep apnea or insomnia, those cortisol levels do not drop and they stay high, producing a higher level of activation during sleep that can affect us adversely with elevated blood pressure, with other comorbidities. So with sleep disturbance, we do not only have decreased response to vaccine, decreased defenses against infections, but we also have higher hormones of stress in our system that can adversely affect us with increasing our blood pressure or producing other adverse reactions in our bodies. So we are summarizing that both physical and emotional stress can affect us, but at the same time, the sleep disruption can also produce increased hormones of stress that can adversely affect our body. So, sleep and chronic disease. So we talk about infection, we talk about stress, and we talk about sleep and chronic disease. And I'm sharing a website from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention from the United States. And in this website, they talk about sleep and sleep disorders. And they mention how sleep can adversely affect sugar control in patients with diabetes, cardiovascular disease. If you have blood pressure, your blood pressure may not get under control if you don't have adequate sleep. As a matter of fact, I personally have done and published studies in children that have obstructive sleep apnea, and we detect how we can detect how the subtle changes on blood pressure are occurring at night with nocturnal hypertension, nocturnal blood pressure, that if it's not addressed early, it can develop into full daytime, full hypertension, and have consequences, cardiovascular consequences in the future. Obesity as well. We have an epidemic of obesity in the United States, and sleep, we have demonstrated how the production of hormones that help us with control of appetite, like leptin, and increased production of ghrelin in obesity, can be unbalanced if sleep is not adequate or is disrupted. And depression, because we also have studies demonstrated how disrupted sleep can affect areas of the brain that leads to more vulnerability for depression or contribute with that predisposition with depression. So sleep is very important for control of chronic diseases, particularly glucose control, as we have mentioned, blood pressure control, obesity, and other mental disorders such as depression and anxiety. In the past, we used to see health as just one concrete aspect. Like I used to just go to the doctor and ask the doctor if I was healthy, or with my parents, with my family, and what the doctors runs a lot of tests, and then the doctor comes back and tells you whether you're healthy or not healthy. Well, that a concept of medicine has changed, because now we know and we understand how other areas can affect our health, how social areas, economic areas, food, nutrition, sleep, economy, neighborhoods, how all of these areas can affect our health and our well-being by contributing to stress levels, contributing to poor control of chronic disease, and contributing to stress or infection levels, and not allowing us to live a full healthy life. So in that sense, health is not just the absence of disease, but it's an overall well-being, both mentally, physically, emotionally. And sleep plays a key component in all of these areas, helping us with our mental health, with our physical health, with stress. And this year, where we as a world united had to suffer the consequences of this pandemic, we have to know how sleep also can be beneficial in immune system for the better response to diseases. So in conclusion, regular sleep is a key component for a healthy future. And as we have discussed today, regular sleep can contribute to having a strong, healthy immune system, helping in control of chronic diseases, and helping with stress, with our stress levels and overall. And all of these components are going to contribute for our overall well-being, for a healthy life, and for a healthy future. So thank you so much for inviting me to participate in your event, and I hope that this talk has been helpful for you.